It is the 200 level, Mike Carpenter in the basement studio, and we are just days away from Illinois football's first big test of the 2025 season. And I wanted to start, if I may, with a bit of self-hypocrisy. Here's what I mean by that. You may remember in past 200 levels when non-conference schedules came out that I sort of argued very vehemently that Illinois should do away with non-conference games that are scheduled against Power 4 teams. And I will say that even includes Missouri. I don't need it. We're a Big Ten team. You get 9 really high-quality opponents, not named Northwestern or Purdue, every year. And I don't know. I think that is plenty. I'll take the 3 scrubs in September and then take my chances against the conference schedule without risking anything for a non-conference game that might do more harm than good. So here's where the hypocrisy comes in and where I've changed my tune ever so slightly from being vehemently anti-Duke, anti-Kansas even last year. I thought we should have bought out of that game until we won that game. If Illinois wins on Saturday at Duke, it is a masterstroke of scheduling. Brilliant. You know, it's a winnable game. You are the road favorite. I think most people would say that you're probably the better team. If we lose, it is a disastrous bit of scheduling. So I'm really just basing my takeaway of the scheduling on the result, which is admittedly hypocritical. But this is a situation you probably did not think you'd find yourself in when you scheduled Duke in the first place, or Kansas before that, or even Virginia before that. It has been remarkable. Even Western Michigan, when PJ Fleck was there, how many times you've scheduled what you thought would be a scrub opponent, only for them to be at their absolute best when the schedule finally came around to playing them. I don't know if Duke is at their absolute best. I don't know if they're at the peak David Cutcliffe years, where I think they did make one ACC championship game. I don't even know if they're as good as the Mike Elko years, but they are a good team. The question on Saturday is Illinois more than just good? Now, in my heart and my head, I think they are. And what we're going to talk about today is why I think that this team is in a prime position to go out and get a road win against this Duke team and to parlay that success into other wins throughout the year, including other road wins. But it's not going to be easy. Not that it ever is when you go on the road. I mean, we saw last year, it's not like Rutgers was lighting the world on fire, and it took a miracle comeback late in that game to pull that one off. So Illinois can lose on Saturday, and there's a lot of smart betting people that are taking Duke plus 2.5, and it makes sense. Home dogs with a quarterback like Mensah, who's a very good quarterback, and some talent at wide receiver, a lot of guys coming back on defense. It would make sense why Illinois would be ripe for what would be a very mild upset, according to Vegas, on Saturday. But on the other hand, if you have dreams or aspirations of sniffing a college football playoff, you got to win this game. And I think that the guys at that Smith Performance Center know that. Now, are they talking out loud and in conversation, at least publicly, about their college football playoff prospects? I don't know about that. But I would imagine it's in the back of all their minds, and they know that in order for them to get into that 12-team playoff, they probably got to win 10. And we talked with Lonte about this, and it came up in the conversations I had with Isaac and Trevor and Jeremy throughout the preseason. 10 probably is the magic number. This team entered this year hoping to be better than the team that came before it that already won 10 games. Yeah, I do think this is very much a business trip. And one could argue that there's going to be extra pressure on Illinois going into Saturday's game. And I think it would be fair to argue that there's probably more pressure on Illinois going into Saturday's game than there necessarily is against Duke, who will have an ACC schedule to look forward to and will probably find their way to 8 wins without too much of a problem. This is a marquee win opportunity for them. This is for Illinois an opportunity, I think, to get a head start on college football playoff conversations. And I know it's early in the week or early in the season for it, only week 2, but this is where I mentioned, if they win, it's a masterful bit of scheduling, because all of a sudden, very early in the season, you have vaulted yourself and you've kind of penciled yourself in as a college football playoff team with plenty more to play out. There's USC, there's Indiana the week before that, there's Ohio State in October and at Washington. But this is both your first challenge, but also your first potential accolade that you can kind of put in your back pocket and have with you the rest of the year. The good news for Illinois is that if they get this win on Saturday, this Duke team does seem good enough from a coaching perspective, from a personnel perspective, to have a good season themselves. And people won't be looking at that Duke win, even if Illinois wins by a point, and say, well, Duke's in the ACC, therefore that one doesn't mean anything. I think people would recognize that that is a quality win, if not a marquee win, one that vaults Illinois for sure into the playoff. It certainly doesn't hurt their chances. And whereas playing 3 scrubs in the non-conference would mean that you have to basically be only one mistake in the Indiana, USC, and Ohio State gauntlet, one mistake, winning this would maybe allow you 2. Winning this might allow you 2 mistakes through the rest of the year. And, man, no pressure, right? I will say this, though, from a fan's perspective. I don't necessarily feel pressure going into this game, despite knowing there is actually quite a bit that is at stake if we are to talk about postseason prospects. It's so early in the season, and for all the returning guys that we have on this team, there's still so much left to play out that I'm relatively loose as a fan going into this. And I don't know what that says. Is it confidence in Bret Bielema and this coaching staff to have this team prepared? I think it's a little bit of that. Is it confidence in the veterans that are on this team that have been through road struggles and road successes? It's a little bit of that. Is it the fact that I don't buy Duke as more than just a good team? I think there is a ceiling capped based on ACC conference play and the kind of athletes that they probably have brought in. Maybe, though that's always difficult to quantify geographically from conference to conference. I think it's also just the fact that so early in the season, even with all the knowns, there's still so many unknowns that we do have to kind of let it play out. You can be disappointed, and I would be disappointed if Illinois loses on Saturday. I think that's fair. They should win. I think they should win. It is not necessarily, oh God, 2025 is over. Not when you have so many opportunities in front of you. And if I were to have learned something from Bret Bielema's second year here, after that Indiana loss on a Friday night, that was just, I'm so sick of this. And then they rattle off 6 straight wins to a 7-1 start. I couldn't have foreseen that then. I couldn't have foreseen that they would beat Wisconsin on the road and Iowa at home and the ranked Minnesota team at home, 1, 2, 3 in a row. But it happened. At that point, I could have even seen them beating Virginia at home, though Virginia ended up stinking and you crushed them. So there is a little bit of let the season play out. And that Illinois team had plenty of veterans too. But what they were not well-versed in is winning. This team is a little bit more well-versed in that. They are coming off of that 10-win season. Duke themselves coming off a 9-win season. So with all that at play, it's a big game. And it's both exciting and also a little terrifying to have a big game this early. But because of that early part, it certainly doesn't have the same sort of butterflies in the stomach yet that maybe USC game week or Ohio State game week will. And honestly, nor should it. So what we're going to talk about today, what does Illinois have to do to win this game? Why do I think they will? I mean, not to spoil the prediction, but I do think they will, and I'll tell you how I think they will. And what does that mean for the rest of the season? And Illinois' path, if they so choose to try to get there, to a college football playoff. But it does start Saturday in Durham, North Carolina, where it's going to be 90 degrees, scorching hot in front of, I don't know, I checked the ticket office today for Duke. It is a paltry-looking crowd I don't know how they're going to get enough people in there to actually do a blue out and have fun with wearing blue in 90-degree temperatures. You get the road whites if you're Illinois. Lucky for us. So let's get into it. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, got to remind you that the best way to help us out on the 200 level is to support our sponsors. And that includes Hamilton Walker's Steak, Seafood, Spirits in downtown Champaign. Really appreciate Nathan and the staff at Hamilton Walker's for being supporters now for the second year in a row of the 200 level. And this is a great place for both formal and informal dinners alike, whether it is a pregame meal or a date night with your partner. Hamilton Walker's in downtown Champaign is the best restaurant in Champaign-Urbana. I say that with very little doubt, and there's a lot of good places in town, but we're lucky to have them as part of the 200 level. Also, State Farm agent Brian Hansen. Online at brianismyguy.com for life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it. Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well. So whatever your insurance needs are, you can go to brianismyguy.com, get some more information. You will get the State Farm prices that you would come to expect from a place like that. But to me, what really sets Brian apart is him and his staff's quickness at getting back to you. I've used this anecdote before, but I ended up buying out the car for my lease, and Brian got back to me within 3 minutes with a updated insurance card now that I own the thing. So that's just one example of how quick they are, and very lucky to work with them and also have them as part of the 200 level. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call today at 217-841-4728. Dogtown is probably starting to get those furnace checks lined up. You probably noticed it's a little bit cooler than that extremely hot summer that we had. And now that we are getting into lows in the 40s, you will hear that furnace click on probably sometime in the next month. So get that checked out today. Get that scheduled by calling 217-841-4728. And finally, Owen Builders LLC, online at owenbuildersllc.com for your next home improvement project. Check out a gallery of their work online at owenbuildersllc.com. Luke and his staff, expert craftsmen, but what really sets them apart is for contractors and people that have worked with contractors, you know, the communication can leave you wanting sometimes. Not necessarily the case with owenbuildersllc.com. Got to thank Champagne Showers Podcast Network and appreciate you, the listener and the viewer. Hello to those on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. We are simulcasting across all three. It has been very cool to see the numbers as they start to trickle in on all three channels. Essentially when the dust settles and we have broadcast across all three, the video portion of our podcast is getting anywhere between 500 and 800 views. And then for the audio portion, we're still getting what we got there. So it's cool to build that audience. And I got to thank StreamYard, which is this platform I use that allows me to do that. One thing for those that are watching, you may notice that the camera quality isn't great. So I say all that. It's not StreamYard's fault. It's the fact that when you try these new things, the camera I got, for whatever damn reason, is the orangest looking camera. I look like an Oompa Loompa in this thing. So I had to get this third-party software so I don't look overly orange. I mean, I'm all about the Illini, but I looked freakish. And yet now it is taking away that it's basically not allowing me to do HD. But maybe that's not a bad thing. You don't need to see my face in HD. All right, let's get to Saturday's game and why I'm optimistic about Illinois' chances. So I think that there were issues against Western Illinois, and despite the 52-3 win, it is kind of the best of both worlds. You got the win, you stayed healthy, you made mistakes. Let's say Illinois had played an eerily perfect game. Would you necessarily feel that much better? Well, maybe a teensy-eensy bit, but I think there's value in winning a game and still having tape from that game that says, yeah, you didn't do so great in these areas. Now, we talked in previous podcast, the one after the Western game, about how, Luke can't take sacks like that. And he essentially did take all three of those sacks. We talked about the special teams blunders, though not really a whole lot. I don't think I mentioned the punter. I didn't mention a new punter whose one punt was bad. And, we mentioned Caleb Patterson, who was a problem on defense. So by my count, those are three things. I guess you could throw in there if you really wanted to nitpick, and that's fine. It's a game one opponent, an FCS opponent. you should be able to nitpick a little bit. And you could say that Caden Fagan, despite looking big and strong and has some speed, it doesn't seem like he has that vision yet. I would counter by saying that Caden seems to be very much a guy whose vision comes to him a few games into the season. So maybe don't count on that Saturday either, but I still think he's going to be very valuable. And you could maybe look at the fact that a guy like a Hudson Clement or a Colin Dixon only had one catch each. I mean, we can nitpick, and that's fair. But the good news, I think, is this. If you were to say what is maybe the most impressive takeaway from Friday's game against Western, to me, it simply starts with both lines. I thought the offensive line looked pretty darn good. And this in a game where I think Barry Lunney was very purposefully not just running it down the gut, because that wouldn't have taught Barry or Bret or the coaching staff anything. You could have run for 300 plus yards if you wanted to against Western. You were trying to get some semblance of rhythm in the passing game with all these new pieces. And that makes a lot of sense to me. But I did think that overall, whether it was passing or rush blocking, you had an offensive line that looked the part. You had Melvin Priestley avoid any disastrous injuries. So that's good news. And he got reps for a lot of your depth, including Schuster, who could play either tackle position, including Hansen, who could play either guard position. I think that bodes well going into a game like Duke, where the heat will be a factor. And it's not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill, but it will be hot. And the hottest part of any stadium on a hot day is the field. Those things cook. I'm not sure if it's field turf or actual grass, but regardless, they will be cooking down there. The people in the stands, all 8,000 of them, will be cooking as well. So I think this matters, where you could have a series that a J.C. Davis or a Melvin Priestley takes off. So so Jordan Schuster can get in and get some of those reps. Keep them a little bit fresher for the third and fourth quarter. You might have a series in the second quarter where you could take out a Geske or a Henderson, which I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens with that, because apparently he did not start on that game Friday night because of being late to a team meeting. Not good. Not good there from Henderson. But I like that. And then defensively speaking, we know what Gabe Akis is. You can call him an outside linebacker, but essentially he's serving the role of an edge rusher. And you got to really like what you saw from Tamiwa Durajaye. I was saying Durajai, but Durajaye in the middle. And then a lot of moving pieces. James Thompson, I know we didn't really call his name, but the guy certainly looks the part. And to me, yes, consider the opponent Western Illinois, but I thought the defensive line just looked big and strong and fast. Will Duke present more resistance against them? Of course. Do I think this is a defensive line capable of being better, if not measurably better than last year's? Yeah, I do. And if that's the case, then a defense that you already feel pretty good about the back end has the chance to, I think, be really good. And I think that could start, if you want to call it start, because how do you gauge a Western Illinois performance? Start on Saturday against an offense that I think Duke will find that getting better and better with the more reps that Mensah gets under center. But that's where I want to start with, as simplistic as it sounds. You have, I think, better lines on both sides. We could argue about Duke's defensive line, but the thing is, I don't want to call them one-trick ponies, but the rush defense last year and the guys they brought back, the rush defense is smack dab in the middle of the nation. Now, that might be partly by design. They're an aggressive defense, and that is going to allow the opposing team to get some rushing yards. It's also going to mean the opposing team is going to get sacked a few more times. You're going to get more quarterback pressures. And that is something to watch for. But if there is a line that can negate Duke's strength on defense, their secondary probably has the most talent, but their defensive line is what would set up the pressures that they're going to try to get on Luke Altmaier. I just like the five guys that you have there keeping Luke upright, not to mention the fact that you can go with the 2 or 3 tight end sets. You can go big in this game. I would imagine that Illinois, and I talked a little bit about this after Western Illinois, will go much more run heavy this year than you would think for a team that brought back a guy like Luke Altmaier. It would make sense, of course, when Luke was coming back. We think, great, get us some stud wide receivers, and then let's just have a high-flying offense next year. But in actuality, the personnel would say, hey, you got Luke back, and that is a coup if there ever was one. But Luke's not going to be a 300-yard a game passer. That's not going to happen this year. Maybe once or twice. But we've seen with Barry Lunny, it is an offense that's predicated on balance. I've always wondered, though, if they had been capable of running more, would it lean heavier on the run? And I think this game might be very indicative of the type of offense Illinois wants to run this year. I think they can be a very good running offense. I think they got the 5 guys on the line, and they got the tight ends, and they got the running backs to do it. And they got the quarterback who can contribute to that running game. I think that also in Illinois' favor, you're looking at a Duke defense that's very aggressive. And again, I'll repeat this because this could come to fruition. That aggressiveness may come and bite Illinois because it might lead to sacks, might lead to a fumble, might lead to a pick, which I know Luke didn't throw many of those last year, but when he was under pressure, his numbers were significantly worse than when he had a clean pocket. So that's all something to watch. But if they do their job, and I think with the help of a tight end or two, they will do their job. Boy, does that make it difficult then for Duke to defend things like the run-pass option, where Luke has been pretty effective in that. I think it makes it very difficult for Duke then to defend maybe a halfback draw to Aiden Lawfrey, which we saw have success throughout last year. And Aiden seems particularly adept at getting that delayed handoff, and then he picks the right hole to go through to gash for a good 7-8 yards. I think that those are things you can exploit. I would maybe be a little bit leery about play action because then you got a sitting duck back there in Luke Altmaier. But I think the quick hitters, the Hank Beatty's in the middle, the delayed handoff to Aiden Lawfrey, or sometimes just a good old-fashioned plow it up the middle with Caden Fagan. I think there are enough tools at your disposal to counteract the aggressiveness that you will see from Duke. Now, maybe Manny Diaz pulls an okie doke, and he, instead of being super aggressive, sits back in coverage because they do have a good secondary, and kind of throws Illinois for a loop. And I really doubt that Manny Diaz is going to be sending blitzes every play. As aggressive as he is, that would be foolish to do. He'll find a balance, but I just have to think that the MO for Illinois on Saturday is on a hot day in Durham, North Carolina, with a big offensive line and tight ends up the what do they call that? Up the wazoo? Is that a term? That you don't need to get too cute. I know that it was a vanilla game plan against Western. I think that it's not necessarily going to be some crazy throw stuff at a wall game plan against Duke. I think this game could lend itself to being Wisconsin, to being Iowa, to being the team that doesn't make mistakes and controls the clock and runs the ball. And I understand if that's not maybe the most exciting game plan that we could be talking about, but I said this with Lon, and I'll say it again. To me, a home run ball is awesome in football. Pat Bryant was full of them, and there are very few things as exciting as when your quarterback drops back, 7-step drop, and you know he's about to launch it deep. The what might just happen is a really exciting feeling to have in the stadium. But sometimes it is that single that you can hit. It's the 6-yard run up the middle from a Caden Fagan. Or it's Khalil Valentine finding that hole between the guard and the tackle and just, boom, zipping through for 8 yards himself. That, to me, is pretty exciting, too. And I think Illinois can do that. Elon, with a running quarterback, bear in mind, was able to run the ball fairly successfully. And again, Duke's numbers last year suggest that they are not going to stifle Illinois' run game if Illinois insists upon it. The question is, if that is your focal point, can Luke Altmaier find receivers for the big plays necessary to blow the top off of that Duke defense? Because the back end is where a lot of their experience is. I think so. Now, to whom? Hank Beatty's a solid choice. I think Justin Bowick showed some flashes, and maybe this time, instead of him slowing up on that deep route, he'll keep going and Luke will find him for a big play. I think Colin Dixon is ripe for a bigger game. I think that your tight ends are going to be able to get in on the action because you can maybe have a play where one of them slips out. And if Duke is aggressive and they send an outside linebacker, well, then a Tanner Arkin just slips out in the flat and then he gets an easy little 12-yard rumble down the field. I think there's just a lot of possibilities for you to use Duke's aggressiveness against themselves. I think there's a lot of opportunity for Illinois to have the ball like 35 minutes this game. I really do. And I think as long as you do that and you don't make mistakes, you're going to win. And this is where I want to kind of bring it to the mindset going into a game like this. If you are anxious to see how Illinois performs in the first test of the season, I'm with you. If you're nervous, I'm with you a little bit, but less so than anxious. And here's the difference. Anxious for the game to kick off and let's get going. I'm glad it's 11 a.m. I'm glad we don't need to wait that long because I would hate waiting for this thing to get going. But nervous would imply that you have an element of doubt. I don't have an element of doubt in that I think if Illinois plays a good game, they win. But as with any road game and with any team not named, well, can't say Alabama anymore, but any team not named Ohio State or Georgia, or you name the Blue Bloods nowadays, Texas maybe, they might not be able to withstand a bad performance on the road against a good Duke team. And I'll keep saying that. Duke is good. I think Illinois is very good. And I think they're old. I don't think that. I know that. And I trust the coaching staff. And I trust that there will be a game plan in place to really just maximize their opportunity to win that game Saturday. I can very much envision Saturday, 3:00, thinking, man, that was a really clean game from Illinois. I can imagine thinking that was a pleasant experience because they just went out there and they had a plan and they executed it, and it was very businesslike. And it might be a game that by the end of the season, we don't really talk about that much as far as individual moments. But I could see it being a game that we talk about as, oh, yeah, that probably was the first validation that our hopes for this team could come to pass. That's how I kind of view this game. And, you know, you'll get the Duke beat writer, I think, on Jeremy's website predicted a Duke win, and this is what happens. And I understand. I mean, if you predict a Duke win, that in and of itself is not ridiculous. But I'm pretty sure that prediction had Duke scoring 34 points. I think Mensah's a good quarterback. If Duke scores 34 points, give me a hat. I will eat the hat. Maybe not literally. I've still yet to eat a hat. But, we'll figure something out because that, to me, doesn't seem too likely. I also think that this idea that it's a high-scoring game, I don't see that. I don't think either coach necessarily wants this to be a high-octane game. I think both of them would probably prefer to lean into their offensive efficiency and making big plays on defense. Who's going to make the big plays more than the other team? Well, this is where I do see people leaning towards Duke when it comes to gambling. But those big defensive plays, if you're Barry Lunny, can't you see those coming from a mile away, and can't you game plan around that? I think with the personnel you have, you can. That is what I will be anxious to see. And I think pretty early on, we will know. We will know if Barry Lunny's plan is for Luke to get rid of the ball quick, to get the handoff, and just kind of churn this thing out. As this is from Jacob here, and this kind of echoes my idea. Run the ball, get over 200 yards on the ground, win by 1 to 2 scores. And without making you wait for a prediction or anything, I think Illinois wins by like 10. I do. I think they win this game by a couple scores, 10 points. I'm trying to think of a comp here. And maybe Nebraska 2 years ago. And I know, or I guess that'd be 3 years ago, 2022. I know that Nebraska team wasn't very good win-loss wise. And I know they had fired Scott Frost by that point. So it was the interim coach. But after that game, if you were to say, well, what was your favorite play of that Illinois-Nebraska game? I can't off the top of my head recall what my favorite play of that game was. All I remember is that it was a very efficient game and that Illinois just went out there in a tough environment and they took care of business. And I thought, okay, I can live with that. I remember the podcast I did after that was called The New Normal. And I was planting my flag that Illinois football is here to stay. We're never having a bad year again. Well, you did in 2023. But this leads to my second point. I think that this group of guys that have essentially been playing together for 3 years now, all the key players for the most part, 2023 was every bit as valuable as 2024. 2024 doesn't happen without the year prior and the disappointments and the 4 interceptions thrown by Luke against Penn State and the game against Wisconsin at home where you blew it late. Last year does not happen without those disappointments, which might sound a little bit cheesy, but I think sometimes these cliches in sports bear out. They went through the ringer that year, and they responded to it. I will continue to say that last year's team was ahead of schedule, that they were more of an 8-win team masquerading as a 10-win team. Though, on the other hand, you are what your record says you are. So kudos to them for maximizing what they had. But I think those trials and tribulations of 23, mixed with the success that they had last year, including on the road against Nebraska, sneaking out the win against Rutgers, and admirably performing at Penn State. And we don't need to mention Oregon, but don't worry, Duke isn't Oregon. Last year's Oregon team was a juggernaut with probably a $20 million budget for NIL. I just think that this is a game that there won't be any flustered Illini players on the sideline. It's not going to be a raucous home environment for Duke, blue out or not. Check out their ticket office page. There is not a section other than the student section, which is already occupied, that you can't get not just tickets in, but like first 10 rows. They're all over. So it's not a football school, and we knew that, but it's almost like they don't give a crap about football school. And that's their prerogative. But, you know, pictures from the Elon game show a glorified high school stadium. And I don't think that's going to just magically change because Illinois comes into town. And this is a benefit of being a good Illinois team. Does the name Illinois necessarily get people all that pumped up? Not yet. And that's okay. In a way, even as the number 11 team, you aren't getting respect yet because you're Illinois, and that makes some sense. Historically, Illinois has not done enough to garner or keep respect. Well, this would be one step to doing that for this year's team. And I think that by just answering the call and going in there and getting the win in business-like fashion, as I keep kind of repeating, that it just shows that you've turned another corner. That even with a bit of a target on your back, you're able to respond in a positive way. Does Illinois, when they walk on that field, have any doubt that they should win that game? No, they don't. And I think that does matter sometimes. I think that what it does is for a group of older players like this Illinois team has, can really kind of galvanize and focus them as they go out against a tough opponent. And it doesn't help that it's on the road. But I'll say this, if you were to choose between road and home, wouldn't you take this Illinois team on the road this year with all the older guys and then try to sneak one out at home next year, assuming Mensah comes back and is a junior quarterback for Duke? I would take that split. But, yeah, I think that this is really just an opportunity that I dreaded because of the possibility of losing it and Duke all of a sudden getting halfway decent again, to a moment that I think is actually pretty well timed if you are to make a push for the college football playoff. And whether they're saying those 3 words, college football playoff, at the Smith Performance Center or not, they're thinking it. They're at least thinking it and knowing that this can do some work for you from a national perspective. The perception of people that follow these things, they would look at that win at Duke and say, oh, well, Illinois is definitely a legit top 12 team. If Illinois loses at Duke, it's kind of unfair here. If you get a quality win against Duke, you probably bump up a spot or 2. If you lose at Duke, you probably fall a good 7 or 8 spots. Nature of the beast when you're in week 2 and every win is just, well, you're just staying par for the course and every loss is magnified because you've only played 2 games. But I think that's kind of what you're looking at. You do probably stand more to lose for week 2, just in this bubble. You probably do stand more to lose than gain. But I think the long-term play here is you do stand more to gain from this. And one more positive, if you win this game, what a nice little appetizer before you go to Indiana. I think Indiana is gettable. I don't want to overreact to what they did or did not do against Old Dominion. I think that Indiana game was gettable before I watched a single snap of theirs. What a great way to get your road jitters out of the way. Again, not a very intimidating atmosphere at Duke, but it's still a road game. It's the getting on a plane, or I guess bus for Indiana, staying in a hotel the night before, being in a completely different place, and then playing in front of fans of the other team wearing different colors and cheering for them and booing you. Now, Indiana will be this on steroids, but it's a nice little crash course before you get to that. And if you can somehow get those reps in while still getting the W, that is pretty much all that you can ask for a week 2 non-conference game. So, have I turned around completely about the Duke scheduling? Not necessarily. Again, if they lose, boy, I'm not going to be very happy that this existed in the first place. I just don't think they will. So, a score, perhaps? I think Illinois wins this game 27-17. You might say 17 points is all you're giving up to Darian Mensah. Yeah. I think you can have a really good quarterback and yet still have an offense that doesn't quite get cooking. I'm happy that we're playing Mensah in this offense in week 2 and not later. I don't care how good the quarterback is. We had tape on him from Tulane and the game against Elon, so we could prepare against this quarterback, but he's still got to get those reps with his guys. If you play them later this year, I'm sure they'd be better. So, yeah, I think 27-17. To me, that sounds right because I don't buy Duke's defense as being particularly good. And one other thing, too, as dangerous as this may be, the ACC versus Big Ten in football is not really a fair competition. Not to poke at SMU, but we saw what happened when they went to Penn State for the opening college football playoff game last year. It's just not, it's not the same. And not to pull the SEC card, but look what Ole Miss did to Duke in the bowl game last year. It wasn't a game. It was an exhibition game for them. It was not a challenge. Are your Jimmies and Joes maybe quite at the level of a Lane Kiffin Ole Miss? Maybe not. But on the other hand, maybe this is where the bowl game means something. You showed you got the dudes. Illinois didn't beat South Carolina through smoke and mirrors. They lined up and they beat them. And there weren't fluky plays that went in your favor that gave you the W when you didn't snatch it from the jaws of defeat or anything like that. You were every bit the team they were, and that includes size and muscle and all that. I just think that you are, in a myriad of ways, bigger, faster, and stronger than Duke. Enough so where you will win the game and you can do what you got to do and execute the way you want to. Mistakes and fumbles, interceptions, all that jazz can certainly affect this, of course. But if Illinois plays a clean game and they play well, they win by 2 scores. I really do think that. You know what would be even better is if, for whatever reason, they kind of pull like Wisconsin 2022. And we're watching in the third quarter, and oh my God, Illinois is up, 28-10? What the hell is going on here? Why not? For some reason, one game I can't shake is the Rose Bowl team in 2007 went out to Syracuse and just kicked their ass. Now, that Syracuse team, I don't think won a lot of games. I think this Duke team is probably better than that Syracuse team, though it's weird to compare teams 18 years apart. But I didn't expect us to smoke Syracuse. Just get the win, right? And then you smoked them. Now, since that Syracuse game, I'm pretty sure Illinois has won 1 non-conference road game, and that would be UConn. Not a good record. And you can talk about at Kansas, not good. At Virginia, not good. Go back to the Lovey era. I forget what some of them were. There was at North Carolina with Bill Cubit. Definitely not good. At Washington with Tim Beckman. At Arizona State with Tim Beckman. But, the list goes on. But past history, in this case, I don't think predicts future success. And I think, if anything, if the team were to see that stat that, hey, Illinois football is 1 for 14 or whatever ungodly number in their last 15 non-conference road games, then great, put it on the bulletin board. Then that's a streak we got to get rid of, because really UConn doesn't count. I mean, come on. I remember, I think UConn actually took the lead in the first quarter on a pick 6 or something. Thank you, Bobo. Syracuse went 2-10 that year. So yeah, they were much, much worse than what this Duke team will be. So no, I don't see a blowout. I do see a win, 27-17. There you go. I'm doing it. I don't feel bad about this matchup. I just don't. And I've tried to find any angle like, man, am I missing something? Am I drinking the Kool-Aid? But here's the thing. I didn't leave that Western Illinois game all of a sudden thinking, that's it. I knew it. We're going to the college football playoff. I left it thinking, okay, the path is exactly the same going forward as I thought it was coming into that Western game. I didn't learn much, but I wasn't dissuaded by what I saw. And I would have said the same thing about the Duke game probably before the season, but I know that performance that they had against Elon in the first 3 quarters seemed to indicate a team that's still finding itself. If they find it quickly, and if they somehow find it in week 2, all power to Manny Diaz and to Darian Mensah and to that Duke team. I just don't think they're going to find it yet. And I think that this is a great opportunity for a seasoned Illinois team to take advantage of that fact. All right, let's get the win. A couple more things before I go. Just quick notes on the Big Ten and college football in general. Monday night was Bill Belichick's debut. It was an abject failure, and it will be. And as Trevor said in our chat thread, and I tend to agree with him, if he lasts more than 18 months, and if he wins more than 5 games at North Carolina, I, along with Trevor, will eat a hat. We'll each have a hat in front of us. We'll slice it up, dice it up, saute it, whatever. We'll eat it. This is a disaster. Him and his little weird culty girlfriend, 24 years old. And listen, age is nothing but a number, some would say, but she's a little bit wackadoo. And he's just old enough to be a little vulnerable to the advancements of a young lady. And this is something, too, that got me thinking. I was listening to the Dan Bernstein podcast. I'm a big Bors and Bernstein fan from back in the day in 670. And Bernstein went off the air for understandable reasons, but now he's back with a podcast. And him and Matt Baticola were talking about how silly this Belichick thing was on ESPN, because no one likes Bill Belichick unless you're a Patriots fan. And that's true. The guy's been a unrelenting asshole his entire career. I don't find it cute to be the guy that goes into press conferences and just blatantly decides I'm going to be a jerk because I guess I have the right to be. I don't find that endearing. I don't find grouchiness endearing. So who was enjoying this? I hope the numbers bear that out. I hope the ratings kind of sucked, except for Massachusetts and the Patriots fans that wanted to see the old ball coach. But we might end up at a place here with this legendary coach who was a Hall of Famer, or if not already will be, and find ourselves asking, what would his career have been with not for Tom Brady? And we'll never have a good answer for that, because it doesn't look good, but you also can't dispel all the success he did have. Regardless, what a weird situation. And it feels like Lovey vibes, but in a way, maybe even worse, because I don't even know how much Bill Belichick wants to be there. Actually, I thought the same thing about Lovey after not that long. I mean, what an absolutely dismal era that was. And I know we got the Performance Center, and you can give credit to him. I give more credit to Josh Whitman for capitalizing on it. But man, find me a pro coach that comes to the college level and has success. And it is a rare thing to find, because Chip Kelly couldn't really do it. I guess you could say that, I don't know, Jim Moore. Didn't Jim Moore or someone come back and do that? And that didn't really work out. It just doesn't seem to. And Bill Belichick is, I'm not an ageist. He's too damn old for this, for a guy that's been out of it. And imagine if there was an Illinois offensive lineman recruit who ended up going to North Carolina. I think he signed with them back in the spring. Okay, I get it. Bill Belichick, Super Bowl winning coach, and he's going to coach him up. No, he's not going to be there. So whoever that guy was, this offensive lineman recruit, guess what? He'll probably be here next year. There'll be attrition, and all these boosters paying the guy, I think, $10 million a year to suck. Hey, I don't have necessarily beef with North Carolina football, but as an institution and after the academic scandal and just fine, I'm all too happy to see this. So maybe in that way, us and Duke, or in this case, kindred spirits in a way that we normally would not be. But that was kind of fun to watch just how bad that got. The pick six, the scoop and score. What a terrible quarterback this Gio Lopez was. Just, it was fun. And why were there celebrities there? I'm a Yankees fan. Aaron Boone went there, and I guess it's because his son's on the staff. Okay, fine. That made more sense. But nonetheless, I was perturbed thinking, why are we heaping all this attention onto a guy that's been out of the game for a few years? And man, college football fans could have seen this coming from a mile away. This probably wasn't going to work. But while he's there, let's enjoy just how awful it might get, because I get the feeling it might, and I'm kind of excited for that. From a Big Ten perspective, UCLA sucks. And Nico Iamaleava, I don't know. Ugh. Nico, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. Really bad debut, and I don't mind that from this perspective. I think athletes should get what they deserve to get. So him leaving Tennessee in order to get paid what he thought he was worth, that in and of itself is not all that bad. However, as with anything, you take the NIL era. It starts at one point, and then it gets a little too big for its own good. And you start seeing essentially a 19 or 20-year-old, saying what's what, when really, what have they accomplished to garner such riches and attention? In the case of Nico, who had a pretty darn good year for Tennessee, and Tennessee was excited to have him back, the way that he went about this thing was a little bit off-putting. And it's fair to say that, because it was strictly turning it into professional sports. And while I'm happy that college is going towards that, you get what you deserve model for revenue sports, it was icky. So to see him go out to UCLA with a dope of a coach, Deshaun Foster, I believe, and get your asses handed to you at home, mind you, by Utah in front of maybe 5,000 people at the Rose Bowl, whatever. That is A-okay with me. Elsewhere in the Big Ten, though, hey, what can you say? Ohio State, they're good. And Ryan Day reloaded. And I will say, from all the coaches in the Big Ten, he can be an easy one to make fun of. But by most accounts, he might also be one of the better dudes to be a coach in the Big Ten. So he's a hard guy to root against, but he's an easy guy to say, oh, God, Ryan, what's going on? Because the Michigan loss is for one. And also the unfortunate photo of him before the game with what looked like a nipple ring. But you do you, Ryan. I mean, there's nothing illegal about that, if that's, in fact, what it is. But Ohio State is very good. So October 11th, you'll probably be facing the number one team in the country when they come to town. Why not? Let's see what happens. Michigan got the one with Bryce Underwood. You know my feelings on Sharon Moore. Best coach in the Big Ten. That's sarcasm if you can't detect that through your audio speakers. And you just kind of go down. Penn State will be Penn State this year. It'll all come down to the Ohio State game for them, but I'm pretty sure that's on the road, isn't it? It's at the Horseshoe, because it was at Penn State last year. And maybe out of all of them, USC, they smoked their FCS team. And, there's others. Wisconsin didn't look good. Rutgers didn't look good. Iowa can't complete a forward pass to save their lives, even though they got a pretty darn good FCS quarterback transfer. Didn't matter. He stunk again. This is just what happens up there. But they'll still go 9-3. I mean, just watch. They will probably go 9-3. Yeah, I think the Big Ten overall, though, pretty top-heavy. And the teams at the top are pretty darn good. The question now, of course, is where is Illinois in that mix? And Saturday is one indicator of that. You go in and take care of business, I think you can certifiably say, yeah, you're a top 5 team in the Big Ten before you've even played a Big Ten game. Do I think that's what will happen? I'm optimistic. And it will sure make my Saturday go a lot better if they get the win. But I'm speaking for everybody here, of course, and make all of our Saturdays go better if they get that win. So here's my hope. Illinois gets it done, whether it's 1 point or 10 like I predicted, or 30. Probably not going to happen, but what the heck? Just get the win, move on, stay healthy. And that would be a massively successful Saturday. And then you're 2-0 facing Western Michigan in front of a sold-out crowd. You get that win, and then you go on the road to face Indiana. And I think that's gettable. I do. And then it's USC. But for now, this is a consequential game, and they know it. There's no doubt they know it over there, and I think they will perform accordingly. When we will come back for the 200 level, I'm guessing, depending on the game itself, it may be Saturday afternoon. I'm not planning on doing second half podcast for football. I figure, because Sunday NFL is starting. So if it's a win, I feel like you'll probably see me Saturday afternoon. If it's a loss, I might want to move about my Saturday, and you probably would too. And then we could kind of gather our thoughts and come back Sunday. If we lose, it's not the end of the world. But it's also okay to be disappointed because Illinois should get this done. Before we get out of here, got to remind you the 200 level is brought to you by Hamilton Walkers, steak, seafood, and spirits in downtown Champaign. Hamilton Walkers, my personal favorite place in the area, and there's a lot of good places to choose from, but few that have that mix of formal and informal. So whether it is a date night or a pregame meal or just getting a drink at the bar, great bartenders there. Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign. Also, State Farm agent Brian Hansen online at brianismyguy.com for life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it. Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call and schedule that furnace check today at 217-841-4728. And finally, Owen Builders LLC online at owenbuildersllc.com. Check out a gallery of their work and get a free quote while you're there at owenbuildersllc.com. Best way you can support us is to support our sponsors. Thank you all for tuning in wherever you're watching from, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, X, whatever you call the platform. And as I said, Illinois wins. See you Saturday afternoon. Doesn't go so well, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. We'll see you Sunday. And we do that before the NFL games kick off. And hey, that's the other thing. We are now entering that time of year. We're Thursday through Monday. Football across the board. It's the best time of year, and I'm just hoping that Illinois does what I think they can do. And it really starts on Saturday. In the meantime, everybody, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you soon. It is the 200 level.